Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Mav. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about emotions. I want to just come out here and say it. There is no such thing as good or bad emotions. It's just not true. And I'm going to explain myself in this video because you might be like, hey Mav, I hear what you're saying, but that does not make any sense for me. I've definitely had some bad emotions. So let me explain what I mean. Emotions get a really bad reputation in our society. We are taught to value certain emotions over other emotions, and this is a pretty natural thing, I think, that happens. For example, I think people who want to be very business minded think that, you should just leave emotions out of it, just kind of don't involve those things in the situation here. And even before that, like when we're children, our parents will praise us for having like good or positive emotions or for like controlling our emotions. But on the other hand, we might be punished for bad emotions. If we approach a parent and we're sad and a parent doesn't know how to meet us where we're at, we might learn that our sadness is unacceptable. A lot of people were put in timeout for when they had a tantrum or something like that, and they were kind of forced to be by themselves, and it was almost just like they were being punished for that emotion. Honestly, sometimes, especially when we're children, we have a lot of intense emotions and we need someone to help us regulate those instead of shaming us for that experience, but that unfortunately happens to a lot of people. So it is the natural result of that is that we're going to have some judgments towards certain emotions and think that some emotions are less beneficial than others. But another thing that happens is that it's more than just the external judgment from other people that teaches us what to do with our emotions. We also have our own internal experiences that teach us things about certain emotions. So, for example, we have had experiences where we have noticed that one emotion caused us more pain than another emotion, right? We feel happy about something and that might not make us feel bad at all, but sadness or depression feels very painful. So we learn that sadness or things like that are bad or unsafe. Another thing is that we just learn to equate these bad or negative emotions with difficult circumstances. So, for example, if we're driving down the road and we get a flat tire, we're going to have one of those negative emotions like anger or frustration or sadness or something like that. And the other thing is that these negative emotions tend to be trickier to get rid of. They might feel a little bit like stickier than emotions like happiness or excitement. I think there's even a common phrase, it's like happiness is fleeting or something like that. And it's very natural for us to feel stuck when we get like trapped in a bad emotion. We're trying to kind of get out of a funk, and that's something that we have to typically put more effort towards than like losing happiness or something like that. Over time, you might just feel less happy, if that makes sense. So because of these things, we've learned to categorize our emotions as positive or negative. And it's pretty problematic because when we think of something as bad, when we feel that thing coming up, that emotion coming up, it can cause us to have a lot of resistance towards that emotion. So I want to help just educate the people and help everyone understand what an emotion is. Hopefully we can start to let go of all of the stigma and judgment that we place on our emotions, and hopefully can be a little bit more neutral towards the experience of emotions. So what is an emotion? Let's define the term. So an emotion describes a physiological, an unconscious physiological experience that one person has, typically in relation to some type of stimuli. Now, this can be either internal, so coming from our own minds, maybe memories or things like that, or external. So someone does something to us, they give us a present, they yell at us or something, that is going to trigger an emotion. This is a completely natural response that human beings have, right? We can't help the fact that we react emotionally to certain things. Another thing is that we tend to associate different kinds of physical sensations with different kinds of emotions. So for example, with anger, that can oftentimes come with physical sensations of tension. Oftentimes when people are frustrated or angry, they will clench their fists or their jaw. And then also people get hot in the face. I think hot-headed when someone is angry, right? Other examples, sadness can bring heaviness. Sometimes people feel very cold when they feel emotions. And anxiety can come with feeling jittery or shaky. Maybe you can have sweats, or cold sweats can often come with that emotion. It's also interesting because some of these sensations can be shared by what we would categorize as positive emotions. So sometimes when we're feeling excited, we can feel like shaky or jittery as well. With anxiety, oftentimes people will complain of elevated heart rate or heart palpitations, and that can also occur with positive emotions as well. And then also things like happy emotions, those can also bring like a feeling of warmth throughout the body. People feel like, the warm and fuzzies when they're feeling happy. So these are just a couple of different ways that people will describe those different kinds of emotions, right? These are just little descriptors that help describe the physiological, the physical sensation that is associated with different emotions. And another aspect of emotions, I think they can include certain types of thought patterns. Because it's a physiological action, our brain starts to respond to what's going on physiologically. So using anxiety as an example, if a person starts to feel anxious, they might notice that their thought patterns start to change. They might begin to ruminate on certain topics. It might feel harder for them to let go of specific thoughts. They might notice that their thoughts are more directed towards the future, things that haven't happened yet. A lot of planning, like I mentioned before, kind of ruminating on those plans over and over again can come with anxiety. And it's important to notice these different kinds of thought patterns that come up with different emotional states. And another important distinction, or another important note about emotions, is that if we experience these emotions as unpleasant for any reason, we are typically driven to do something to change it. For example, once again, we're just going to kind of use anxiety throughout this whole thing. So if a person is feeling anxious and they don't like feeling anxious, this typically happens subconsciously even. That's why it's so important for us to understand our emotions, because we don't always recognize why these things are happening or why we want to do certain things. But typically, if we feel something, we're going to want to do something with that feeling. So like I said, if we're feeling anxious, we want that to stop. A person might maybe reach for their phone to like scroll on their phone. They might smoke a cigarette or something like that to help them calm down. There's tons of ways that we try to manage our emotions. We can use tons of different things to help our emotions feel better. Another interesting aspect is that we actually don't only do this with what we would assume are negative emotions. We also do it with things that some people would consider positive emotions. There are some folks who were conditioned to believe that happiness is an unsafe emotion. Perhaps if they were really happy as a child and the parent was maybe frustrated with their excitement or thought they were being like too excited or something like that, they might learn that their happiness is something that they need to tone down. So subconsciously, if a person is feeling good, they could be doing things that are sabotaging their state. And like I said, a lot of these things are subconscious processes. We're not consciously thinking, oh, I don't want myself to be happy. We're doing this more in an unconscious level. And we really just need to start having a more open understanding and an openness, honestly, just to our different kinds of emotions. We don't want to be resistant or closed off to any of these experiences. And the reason why this is so important is because every single emotion is necessary for a full and expansive human experience. No matter how wise you get, no matter how spiritual you get, you are still going to have a range of emotions, right? That's very, very important. The polarity of life helps us, helps make this world feel a little bit more exciting. It's kind of part of the reality that we live in. So trying to get rid of that dichotomy is probably going to lead us to feel pretty frustrated. What I'm asking for you to do is understand that this range shouldn't really range in like good or valid emotions to like bad or invalid or like unsafe emotions. We should have a more neutral outlook to all of our emotions. And the reason this is so important is because we wouldn't, like, this is a good example. We wouldn't judge ourselves if our stomach started grumbling, right? We can't control that. So there's two reasons why our stomach makes noises. I mean, there's probably more, but two ones I'm thinking of right now. If we're hungry, our stomach might start growling or grumbling, right? And that tells us like, hey, you might need to eat some food, right? We're hungry, so go eat something. And then also, after you eat, your stomach might make some noise as you're digesting. And that just means like, hey, thank you for the food. We're just doing the work we need to process this stuff through our body. So just kind of hang out and wait out this sensation. Emotions are very, very similar. They shouldn't be judged because they're just this natural thing that happens, like hiccups, right? We can sometimes get annoyed with hiccups, but they're not inherently bad, right? They're just something that happens to our body. And that's what I mean when I say there's no such thing as good and bad emotions. They're all just emotions. Our emotions should be viewed as guides, right? We should kind of start to switch our perspective and stop seeing especially what we would consider as these negative emotions, as being things that are here to hurt us, to cause us pain, to keep us in depression, to keep us stuck in these patterns of anxiety. But they're there to alert us that something is going on. Very similar to how our stomach will grumble if we're hungry. It's letting us know, like, hey, maybe some of your needs aren't getting met. Hey, maybe you feel disrespected in this situation. Hey, maybe the thing that person said really hurt you and you've been pushing it away and ignoring it. So I'm just going to start feeling really bad so that you pay attention to me, right? This is what our emotions are trying to do. They're not here to just cause us to feel pain all the time. They're just trying to tell us something and communicate something to us. We need to start seeing our body, our emotions, all the things that come out of our bodies as gifts, things that are meant to help us enhance this human experience rather than make it feel crappier. The last thing that I want to say is that I want you to view, and hear me out here, I want you to try to view all your emotions as good, even the ones that don't feel very comfortable, the ones that feel very, very painful. I would like for you to start to see if you can observe them as good, inherently good, because you are inherently good, right? Like, I want you to start thinking differently of yourself and notice that the things that come from inside of you aren't bad, they're good. So many people are just walking around with subconscious shame and feeling like who they are in their very core of their being is just ugly and dirty and bad, but you are good. So I hope that you hear, out of everything that I've said today, that you hear that you are good. Thank you so much for sticking around with me through this conversation. If you want to join a community of folks who are trying to do this unlearning work of kind of that dichotomy of good and bad emotions and trying to start to see all of their emotions as good, then come and join my Facebook group. You will find the link in the description, and we would love to see you there. I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more tomorrow. Peace and love. Goodbye.